Hello and welcome to Luke Salmon Books and Studios. In this video I'm actually going to be discussing the Persevere and Motivate business management tool that I've been working on. This is not going to be a video about developing a website. I'm actually kind of stuck at the moment. I'm trying to figure out how to develop the dynamic news loading without messing it up, which is why I'm doing some of it off recording. And I'm still stuck, unfortunately. I'm still trying to figure out why, for some reason, the JavaScript code isn't generating correctly. But that aside, I'm actually going to be working on this as well. And this is what I've been working on over the past couple of days, which is the reason why I haven't really been uploading anything to this channel. So I want to discuss Persevere and Motivate. Now, the first thing I want to discuss, first of all, is how I'm developing this application. This business management tool has been something I've been wanting to make for a very long time, and I've just not really got around to doing it, primarily because I'm always trying to figure out which tools I actually want to use to build this software. I've actually decided and opted for using C# and the library DBM GUI. Now, the wonderful thing about DBM GUI is it's, in my opinion, perhaps one of the most effective rapid application development libraries you could possibly find on in terms of desktop application development. And the main reason why I say that is because actually using DBM GUI is extremely productive. I've never been so productive in my life with regards to actually developing something. You know, all of these drag and drop interfaces, while they're nice and it helps you build something fast visually, it doesn't. There's kind of a caveat there in that you have to work around a lot of event handling. You have to work around trying to connect all of your data up, and that's less than ideal. In this scenario, you don't actually have to do much in terms of linking data, and I'll explain why. So I'll show you what I mean by that. So in a typical C# application, like say in WinForms or WPF, you might have an event handler. And in that event handler, you would say, on text change, make sure you change the value of, say, the title or the description of a database object. And once you click save, which will have another event handler, which will be on click, you would then update the database object. Or if it's a button for deleting the database object, then you would say database delete, right? In this scenario with DBM GUI, I don't need to do that. I don't need to add event handlers. So in this case, where I've got this location where you can add a location, you have short names, addresses, postcode, country, right? What I'm doing is I am passing the string value by reference, and it is updating anytime I change input text. No event handler whatsoever. And this is so much more powerful for database application development than any other style of programming. And it's so much faster and it makes you so much more productive, which is why I've opted for DBM GUI. Why have I opted for C#, however? Why not opt for something like C and C++, where I can start using, pointers and start developing something with a bit more a low-level nature to it? Well, the main reason why is because if I go over here to my DBM project here, this is something that I've been developing again in my free time. It's been mostly off recording, but this is something that I've developed over the course of maybe a couple of months, maybe almost a year. I'm not entirely sure when I started this project actually, but the primary objective behind this project is, well, first of all, there's a caveat to using something like Entity Framework with prepared statements, and the main caveat is, as I've experienced with PHP, when trying to develop Hackshare, as you might be aware of, is with prepared statements, if you bind a parameter to a database column that you say mark, if you mark a named parameter inside of your SQL statement, for example, and you mark it, let's say, twice. If you add then the, sorry, not twice, forget that. If you then bind that parameter and you iterate over each of the fields, like I was originally doing in HackShare, if you try iterating over all of those fields, assuming that all of the database columns that you're binding is of type string, in which case it will work, then what will happen is the last item that you bind will be the result of every single database parameter. And you might be wondering, well, why is that the case? Honestly, I have no idea. This is probably one of the reasons why record libraries, the library used in hacks, typically for database object relational mapping, does the things that it does. It doesn't actually use bind parameters. It actually creates its own quotation system in order to prevent SQL injection attacks, instead of actually opting for parameters, probably because of that same issue. They were probably thinking initially to start using bind parameters, but it didn't work, so they started using their own SQL injection mechanism, or preventing SQL injection themselves and implementing that themselves. I've done the same in this case as well. So if I go down here, for example, and I go to, where is it? Here. So get filter string equivalent. I've got this regular expression, so it's checking things like quotation marks, new line characters, percentage characters, and it's replacing that with backslash followed by the character that was originally used. That's what this \0 is about. And that's to prevent, obviously, SQL injection attacks. So you might say, for example, put a quotation mark, semicolon, drop table users, semicolon. That's an SQL injection attack. And if you don't backslash the quotation mark in that instance, then it would actually drop the table users. If you have that table on your database, and every single user would be deleted, and the website will probably break as a result. So that's why you need to prevent SQL injection attacks, which is why a lot of people say, well, you should use prepared statements. Yeah, but at the same time, if you want to create your own database object manager, like in this case, prepared statements might not actually be the best approach. For that reason that I've just explained, it might not work in the same way that you would expect it to work. And so you need to implement your own SQL injection prevention mechanisms in order to combat things like that. So that's why I've developed this DB object mechanism here, and of course I'm implementing that into this database for this object. Now, again, the main reason, another reason why I haven't used C and C++ is also I'm not actually 100% familiar with it. I could have used this project as an opportunity to learn properly learn C and C++, but there is a lot of nuance with C and C++. It's very order dependent, and I still, even to this day, even after trying to learn it over the course of say 2 or 3 years, I'm still finding difficulty in figuring out how to work around that in certain scenarios. It's often very cumbersome to work with, and there's just so many nuances with C and C++ that I just don't like, so I would prefer to avoid it. I like the idea of low-level programming, and I like the idea of using pointers, but the order dependency of C and C++ really puts me off. So For the sake of my sanity, I'm actually going to be developing this business management software in C#, which is a language that I'm most proficient with. It's been something that I've been using since I was 18 years old, I think, actually. The .NET framework I've been using since I was 13 years old. It was one of the very first things I started learning when I was getting into programming back in those days. So that's what I'm going to be doing. This is what I'm going to be using to develop this management software. So ranting over, let's actually take a look at what's going on inside the software itself. So we have human resources. There's only two things here that actually currently exist. Roles, employees, policies, those things don't exist. We're actually just going to be looking at departments and locations. So apologies for the ranting initially, probably stuff that you probably wouldn't want to hear about if you're just here for the business management side of things. But what is this exactly? What is the departments and locations all about? Well, we've got different departments, right? So we've got in here, there's three examples. So we've got human resources, information technology, and customer services. If we select one, we end up with this this screen here. And in this screen, we've got title and description. So we've got human resources and management of people, policies, and legalese. There's no word wrapping in these multi-line text boxes, which is kind of annoying. I mean, it would be nice to have word wrapping, although it's not a huge big deal. It's nice to have that. It's a beneficial feature, sure, but I'm not overly bothered about that. That's practically the only nuance about DRM GUI that I have, but that's the only issue that I have with it. It's otherwise a very nice graphical user interface library indeed. However, that being said, it might be slightly annoying. Hopefully people can be okay with that, and that will be fine. So we've got two options here. We've got save and delete. So if we were to change any of this, it would automatically change, but if we want to update any changes on the database, we would actually have to click save. So if we were to click save, for example, that would update what we've just changed onto the database, and when we click into it, we would see the changes. If I were to say delete this, for example, and then just click cross instead of clicking save, if I were to then select that, oh, what? Okay. Departments, select. Okay, it's back. I think the reason why that was the case was because it queried the database initially. If I click the cross, we're not querying the database again when we click that cross. That's probably something that I should probably do just to make sure that any changes that we make and then we cancel out of it, like this, for example, and then we select it again, we make sure that we query the database again when we select it. So that's probably something that I'll actually do right now. So let's go back to here. When I click button, so as you can see here, I'm saying current is equal to departments.selected. So we're not querying the database as such. So what I will instead do is say, well, we've got our departments.selected here. If I instead say select, and then this is not the best way to do it. I'm just doing a quick fix, really, and then I'll do the same as what I did previously. So I'll just copy that, put that in there, paste that, start, and that should fix that problem that I showed you. Oh, oops, no database selected. Interesting. Why is that? What is happening? No database selected. In what way do you mean no database selected? Is my select function not working properly? Select primary database. I did select that, right? You see, this is what happens when I explain something and things go wrong. I'm just going to go to what I had previously, so that I can continue explaining things. So I'll fix this a little later when we actually start coding. So we'll go back to this and I'll continue explaining what I was talking about. So we're back to where we were. That's fine. Never mind. So if we then go to locations, so we've got UKBHM. That's basically a short name that we can set here. We've also got a different type. So you might have, say, a warehouse, an office, a factory, or it could be mixed. So you might have, say, a factory with an office. And the main reason for these types is because, let's say, for example, you have, I'm just coming up with a random example here. So let's say you have an office in one location, and the office is where all of the finance goes on. You probably wouldn't have finance going on, say, in a warehouse, for example, or a factory. Factory is where you might produce things. Your warehouse is where you put all of your produced products in. So you might have different projects that are going on, and those projects will be dependent on the type of the location. So you might say create a project inside of a specific department, and that department is at a particular location. Right, now this, you can set departments at given locations. So you might have you might have all of the departments here, for example, or you might have different departments. I should probably add an option there to delete the department. That might be a good idea. So I'll add that. And so as you can see here, we've got departments. You can set departments on a per location basis, set them below, and you can add more departments. Obviously, we've only got 3, so we've got human resources, information technology, and customer services. And of course, if you have different types of locations, so let's say you've got a factory, for example, and you have a different department. So if we go back to departments, for example, and let's say we want to create a new department. So let's say, for example, this department is production. And excuse me, this production department is responsible for the production of, I don't know, cardboard boxes, something like that. And then we save that. And then we've got our production. So let's say, for example, I want to create a factory. So I would create a new location. That makes the other one disappear. So this is going to be a factory. I'm going to say factory. I'm just going to, say to test street or something. So the test city. Obviously, I'm not going to use real data here. TE1 to ES or something, I don't know. Country, so that we've got all of the countries here, as you can see. I mean, it doesn't really matter, I suppose. United Kingdom, because why not? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0, whatever. And then factory at example.com. Again, just test data, it doesn't really matter. And then let's say, for example, okay, well, we've got our production facility, right? And then I would remove 2 of these departments because we don't have the departments for this. That's a good point, actually. I need to fix something there. So I'm going to save that a minute. So we've added this factory. Let's do some programming and fix that. I'm going to go back to locations. When I say select, where is it? Here. I'm going to say link queries is equal to false. And so if I were to go back to locations and I click on factory, in theory that should only have, so we'll say production there, we'll save, and if I were to then reopen that, go back to our locations, factory, select, departments, and then we've got our production there. And hopefully that didn't change anything here either. Obviously I accidentally changed the previous link, so I need to make sure I change that to information technology like it was originally. So let's go back to here. So UKHBM, UKBHM, whatever. So we've got information technology, human resources, customer services, and we've also got factory here. If I were to select that, go down here, that's now production. Awesome. So you can see where this is going, right? So we've got, different locations. We can add departments to each location. We might have a production facility in one location. And so what might happen is, for example, you might have a project that starts at the office. So let's say, for example, you get a customer in, you have that customer come in and they say, I want to produce I want you to produce a new product for us. So that would start in the office. So the office would set up the project, and in that project workflow, or the business workflow, let's say, you might have, say, once you've finished setting it all up, you then say you want to create a test product. So you would then pass on that workflow to the factory. The factory would pick that up. They would see that on their system if they were using the same software, and they would then see it in the production. So you might have separate stages in the project. So one stage might be an automatically generated task list that says we need to set up all of this. The next task list would be allocated to the production department, and that would be allocated to a particular location. So depending on the production, that would be dependent on the location, right? And then you would select which location you want, and then you would say, okay, commit. The people at that location under that department will see that task list, and they'll go through that task list accordingly. Something like that. And that's how this software is going to work. This software is primarily revolving around workflows and task lists. And the idea behind that is you will be able to eventually fully customize the workflow of this software so that you can maximize productivity within your company. That's the main idea. It's more of a general purpose business management solution. As you can imagine, it wouldn't be specific in any way, but you would be able to maximize you would be able to fully customize your workflows and maximize productivity in the way that you desire. And I might have preset workflows that would be dependent on your particular area, if you would prefer that. So I'm going to leave it here. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and in the next video I should in theory have roles completed, and then I'll talk about that in further detail. So thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and hopefully I'll see you again soon.